All right, the learner. Let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
Today we are diving deep into a true classic,
Yeah.
In Search of Excellence,
Huge book.
by Peters and Waterman.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is it. This is one of the books.
One of the ones.
This is one of the ones.
Everyone's read it
You got to read if you're
in the business.
in the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to pull out some of the really interesting stuff from In Search of Excellence.
Right.
Really trying to get to the core of like
The nuggets.
the nuggets, the
Yeah.
insights, the surprising stuff that maybe
Super useful.
surprising and useful that maybe you haven't thought about or you've forgotten.
Right, right.
So
Big companies.
yeah. So these guys, Peters and Waterman, they went and they studied a bunch of companies.
IBM, P&G.
Right.
Bowen.
3M,
McDonald's.
McDonald's,
A lot of
all these big
names.
huge companies, right?
Yeah.
And they were trying to figure out like what
What made them tick?
made them tick. What
are the patterns?
what are the patterns?
What's going on here?
They specifically looked for companies with a long track record of success.
Right.
So not like a flash in the pan, but people that have been doing well for a long time
Right.
so that they could go, okay, is there anything we can learn from these guys?
Right. And
Of
of
which,
course-
as you might imagine,
Yeah.
people pushed back and said, hey, wait a minute, some of these companies, you know,
They're not doing so hot.
aren't doing so well now or whatever.
Yeah.
And their answer to that, which I thought was a really good one, was, look, you know, we're not saying that these companies have figured it out and they're going to be excellent forever.
Right.
We're just saying during this period,
Right.
let's study what was working for them.
Like studying a great athlete in their prime,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Not, in their decline or
Yeah.
or whatever, but like right when they were at the top of their game.
And I'll tell you this too.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So if you took all the companies they studied.
And created an excellence index
Yeah.
and track that against the Dow and the S&P 500.
Yeah.
That excellence index crushed both of them all the way through 2002.
Wow.
So, even though some of these companies may have stumbled later, there was something in there.
There's something.
There was something in the water
Right.
that was working.
So let's dive into some of this stuff.
Yeah.
One of the
Well, that was
things.
one of the big ones.
One of the big ones is bias for action.
Bias for action. Yeah.
And this is kind of a theme.
It is a theme throughout.
It's almost like a meta theme for the whole book.
Yeah.
Like just
Do stuff.
do stuff. Just
Try it.
try it. Get out there.
You can't figure it out
Right.
by thinking about it.
By committee.
Yeah.
By market research.
Yeah.
Like just get out there and try stuff and
You learn by doing.
right.
You learn by doing.
You learn by doing.
And they really stress how important that is. Yeah. That you got to be experimenting all the time.
And it's so hard to do.
It is.
Because you almost have to build this cultural understanding that failure is okay.
Yeah.
And
That is a tough one.
and that's not easy to do.
No, and it's funny because they talk about how it's like, in science.
Yeah.
You experiment, and things blow up sometimes or they don't work.
Right.
But in business,
Right.
we're so afraid of failure.
We want to know we're going to win before we even start.
Yeah, and then we overanalyze it and
Let's study it to death.
we never really
We're afraid to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bias for action was a big one.
Huge.
Close to the customer.
Okay.
Big one.
Yeah.
Close to the customer.
So this is an interesting one because
It seems obvious.
Oh,
Seems obvious. Right.
but it's not.
But then they highlight all these companies
Got off the tracks.
got off the tracks, like IBM, McDonald's, right? At various times, maybe got a little too far away from what the customer really wanted.
Right. And it's hard because how do you even know what all your customers want?
Yeah, distributors, you got end users.
Right.
It's not a monolithic thing.
It's very messy.
Yeah, it's a messy thing.
But one of the things I highlight is P&G.
P&G was great at that.
Yeah.
They were very good at staying connected to the customer.
And that was one of the things they said was
a big one.
a big reason for their success.
For their long-term success, yeah.
Right.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
a lot of times the best ideas
Yeah.
don't come from like some big brainstorming session.
Right.
They come from listening to customers.
Yeah, right.
Talking to customers, being in the field.
And they talk about
Understanding what their problems are.
Yeah, and they even highlight some examples in the book of companies that got their best product ideas from customers.
Yeah.
And it's like that's so obvious.
It does seem obvious.
But are you really doing it?
Right. Are you really doing it?
Are you really going and like
Getting out of the building.
Getting out of the
To
building,
people.
talking to people.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, another big one is simple form, lean staff.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah,
Is that what they say?
I think so.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And it's this idea that like,
Don't overcomplicate things.
yeah,
Don't create all these crazy organizational structures.
right.
Keep it simple so people can figure out what they're doing.
Right. And they're very much advocates of like, you know.
Minimal staff. Outsource what you can.
Yeah.
Don't have this huge bloated staff.
Right.
Use task forces,
Right.
project-oriented stuff.
They're very skeptical of like,
The big career staff.
yeah, like the people that are just kind of,
Just there.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think they feel like that can get in the way.
Yeah, of the people doing the real work.
Yeah, of the people actually doing the work.
Right. So autonomy and entrepreneurship.
Ah, yes.
This is a big one.
This is a big one.
And they really tell this amazing story about Boeing winning the contract for the B-52.
The B-52.
The B-52 bomber.
Yeah.
So tell me about that story. What are the highlights there?
One of the things was, and this is incredible, so
Yeah.
the day that Allied forces took over the German research facilities at the end of World War II,
Yeah.
Boeing engineers
Mm-hmm.
were already in there poring over the files,
Oh.
looking at the German research.
Talk about bias for action.
Right,
Wow.
right.
So they're like on top of it.
On top of it.
What?
And what they were looking for was confirmation of their own ideas about swept wing design.
So they had this idea that swept wing
Was the way to go for these new high-speed jets.
okay.
And so they went right to the German research to see if they were right.
And were they right?
They were right.
Wow.
They were right. And they were also able to, the Germans had done a lot of wind tunnel testing and stuff like that.
Right.
So they were able to glean a lot of information from that.
Oh, wow.
So that was one thing.
Okay, so that's amazing in itself, but there's more to this story.
And there's more to the story. So
Yeah.
there was this.
I've heard about this.
Oh, yeah. So there's this legendary weekend
Yeah.
at a hotel in Dayton where a small team
Yeah.
of Boeing engineers holed up.
Yeah.
And in 72 hours, they redesigned the B-52.
Wow.
They came up with a completely new design
Wow.
based on all this new information.
So they had this information from the Germans.
Yeah.
They had been working on swept wing, and
They
they
basically locked themselves in a room
oh,
for a weekend.
and they came out with the B-52.
And they came out with B-52. And you know what's even crazier?
What?
They built a scale model.
Yeah.
They built a scale model for like $15
Wow.
out of balsa wood and stuff from a hobby shop.
Wow. So they're like
Just a scrappy team.
scrappy team.
Dedicated.
They believe in what they're doing.
And they came up with an iconic aircraft.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And they say this pattern
This wasn't just a Boeing thing.
of this like small team
Yeah.
that's really driving innovation.
Right.
They saw that at other companies too, right?
Yeah, they talk about 3M,
3M,
IBM,
IBM.
having these like small competitive bands of what they call pragmatic bureaucracy beaters.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Pragmatic bureaucracy beaters.
It's like these little teams that are just like getting stuff done.
Get out of our way.
Yeah.
We're gonna figure this out.
We're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about another one of these principles.
All right.
Productivity through people.
Productivity through people.
And this is really about valuing your people.
Your people.
Yeah.
Like really treating your workers
As assets.
as assets. Yeah. As the source of
Yeah.
productivity gains.
And it's interesting because they talk about how, some people would dismiss
Yeah.
these kind of almost like tribal behaviors you see in Japanese companies.
Right. Like the company songs and the corporate litany.
Yeah, like that's not going to work in America.
Yeah.
We're too cool for that.
Yeah. Yeah. But then they point out that
But hold on. What about Tupperware parties?
right.
What about Mary Kay? What about, these were like
These were huge.
American phenomena.
Yeah.
Driven by like,
Totally.
totally dedicated employees,
Yeah.
and think about that. Morley Safer,
Oh yeah.
60 Minutes piece on Mary Kay.
Oh my gosh.
Like that was
It was amazing.
incredible. It captured that perfectly.
Right. Right. And they also talk about HP
HP.
and their, regular beer busts
And
as a way to
keep everyone in touch.
right. Yeah.
Like keep that
Communication.
open.
Yeah.
And there's that great story about IBM's sales training program where they
They would sing.
would sing company songs.
Yeah.
Right.
And they would really get into it. And it's like it might seem a little corny or whatever, but
It worked.
it worked.
It built that sense of
Camaraderie
and shared purpose.
Right. And so the core message here is really about
Treating people with dignity and respect.
Respect.
Viewing them as the source of your success.
Right. And they quote Thomas Watson Jr.
From IBM.
And he said, respect for the individual. That
was number one.
Number one.
Right.
Right. And so that kind of leads into this idea of hands-on, value-driven leadership.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually quote Thomas Watson Jr. again. And he says,
what did he say?
He says, I firmly believe that any organization, in order to survive and achieve success, must have a sound set of beliefs on which it premises all its policies and actions.
Right.
He goes on to say, next, I believe that the real business of every leader is to carefully think through and help articulate these beliefs and how they should guide and be reflected in every aspect of the organization.
Wow, that's great.
So he's saying like the philosophy is more important
than anything else.
Than even like the technology, the structure, the innovation, the timing, like the philosophy.
It all flows from that.
Is key.
Yeah.
And they talk about how
like legendary leaders.
Yeah, like Watson himself, William Hewlett.
HP.
They were known for walking the plant floors.
Yeah, just getting out there.
Yeah.
Talking to people.
Yeah, and they talk about Ray Kroc. McDonald's and how he was always out there visiting stores and assessing them on
USC&V
quality service, cleanliness, and value. So it's like
he was hands-on,
right?
Yeah.
And setting that tone.
Setting the tone
by being out there.
Leading by example.
Right?
Yeah.
So another big one is stick to the knitting. And this is really about
focus. Stay close to the businesses you know how to run.
They quote Robert W. Johnson, who was the former head of Johnson & Johnson, and he had this great advice. Never acquire a business you don't know how to run.
Simple,
right? Yeah. And then Edward G. Harness, who was the former CEO of P&G, he said, we aspire to be anything but a conglomerate.
Wow.
And so
they knew what they were good at.
They knew what they were good at.
And they stuck to it.
Yeah. And so they're saying, there are obviously exceptions.
Right.
But by and large, the excellent companies tended to
focus on their core competencies.
Stay close to what they knew how to do.
Yeah.
And not get
too far afield.
Yeah. So related to that is emphasis on quality.
Oh, yeah.
And they have some really interesting stories about this.
Like what?
Well, they talk about this P&G executive who was part of a summer executive program. Oh. And he was like passionately defending
the quality of their toilet paper.
Yeah. And it's like, it might seem like a small thing, but
it shows
that like
they cared.
Even about the
toilet
bill. Toilet paper. Oh. And then they tell the story about how during the Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
P&G refused
to substitute an inferior ingredient
in their soap.
Yeah.
Even when it meant
that they couldn't meet the needs.
They couldn't fully meet the needs of the Union Army.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like they were that committed.
To quality.
Yeah.
And they highlight that people in brand management at P&G believe that
quality
is more important for their success than even their marketing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not just a slogan.
It's deep.
It's
in their DNA.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting one.
All right.
Tolerance of irrationality and overlap.
Irrationality.
Yeah, irrationality and overlap.
Okay.
And this is kind of counterintuitive.
It does seem kind of
like, we're always taught to be
rational,
right.
Data-driven, all that stuff.
That they're saying.
But they're saying that sometimes you need to allow for
a little bit of
chaos.
Yeah.
A little bit of irrationality.
Yeah.
And they give examples like the irrational product champions at 3M.
Right.
Like these are people who just had this passion
for
an idea that maybe didn't make sense on paper.
Right.
But they just kept pushing it.
Right. And those are the things
and those became huge successes.
Right.
Yeah.
And they also talk about product line proliferation.
Right. Like at Digital
Equipment Corporation.
Yeah.
And they were known for having
all these different products.
And it seemed kind of crazy.
Right. But it worked for them. Yeah.
And then they talk about internal competition.
Oh, yeah.
Like P&G.
Yeah.
General Motors.
IBM.
IBM.
They all had this thing where they would
kind of pit
pit teams against each other.
Different divisions
Yeah,
against each other.
And it would spur innovation.
Right. And they talk about Alfred Sloan at General Motors
Yeah.
and his, famous introduction of overlap in the car lines.
With Chevy, Pontiac, Oldsmobiles, Buick Cadillacs.
Yeah.
All those different brands.
Yeah, and he did that.
He did that on purpose.
On purpose to create
that competition,
right?
Yeah.
And they say, rationalists tend to
hate overlap.
hate overlap.
Hate mistakes.
Right.
They want everything to be
Neat and tidy. Like, okay.
Meticulously planned.
And they say,
That can stifle innovation.
that can stifle innovation.
Yeah.
So the last one here is the importance of values and culture.
Wow.
And this is kind of the culmination of everything. They're saying that, the rational approach to management,
It misses a lot.
it misses a lot.
Yeah.
And they talk about Chester Barnard.
Chester Barnard.
Ooh.
He was big on...
He was big on the importance of values.
Yeah.
And he said...
What do you say?
He said, the functions of the executives, so this is the name of his book.
Okay.
The functions of the executive, he
Right.
says, are to provide a system of communication that reaches every member or contributor to the organization to promote the securing of essential efforts and to formulate and define purpose.
So he's saying like the leader's job
Yeah.
is to really shape the values
Yeah.
and the purpose of the organization.
And he really focused on like the informal...
Yeah, the social property.
Yeah.
The informal organization.
The informal organization of the company. And he contrasted that with people who...
Just manipulate formal reward.
Yeah, like just trying to,
Carrots and sticks.
carrots and sticks. Yeah, and they say Barnard's ideas were really influential, but they kind of
Went dormant for a while.
went dormant for a while. And then you had people like Carl Weick
Carl Weick.
and James March
James March attacking that rational model.
attacking that purely rational model.
Yeah.
And they say, Weick had this
Idea.
idea that organizations learn very slowly
Yeah.
and they cling to these habitual internal cues.
Yeah, they just do the same thing
Right.
over and over again.
And it's like that image of the bank teller.
The bank teller's sorting punched cards
Sorting punched cars.
by hand, even though, like,
It's totally obsolete,
it's totally obsolete.
right? But they're so used to doing it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're saying that, building new capabilities
Yeah.
is not just about identifying what's not working.
Right.
It's about more than that.
It's like saying if you want to design a bridge,
Yeah.
just study all the bridges that failed.
Right.
Like, that's not going to tell you.
Yeah, it's not going to know
How to build a good bridge.
how to build a good bridge.
Yeah.
Right.
So you got to go deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they conclude this section by saying
What do they say?
the rational model misses a lot.
Like the importance of loving your customers.
Yeah.
Empowering workers.
Yeah.
The effectiveness of self-generated quality control.
Yeah.
Nurturing product champions.
Yeah.
Encouraging internal competition.
Yeah.
Overspending on quality and service.
Wow.
And they say good managers make meanings for people as well as money.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
So to kind of recap
Yeah.
the big themes,
The big takeaways.
the big takeaways.
Yeah.
Bias for action, close to the customer.
Simple form, lean staff.
Simple form, lean staff.
Autonomy and entrepreneurship.
Autonomy and entrepreneurship.
Productivity through people.
Productivity through people.
Hands-on, value-driven leadership.
Hands-on, value-driven leadership.
Stick to the knitting.
Stick to the knitting.
Emphasis on quality.
Emphasis on quality.
Tolerance of irrationality and overlap.
Tolerance of irrationality and overlap.
And the importance of values and culture.
The importance of values and culture.
Yeah.
And it's like they all kind of tie together.
They do. They're interconnected.
They're interconnected. It's
Yeah.
not like you can just pick one
Right.
and be like,
I'm going to be close to the customer.
yeah, I'm going
But I'm going to have a really complicated structure.
yeah, and I'm not going to empower my people.
Right.
Like, it's all got to
It's all got to work together.
work together.
Yeah.
So the learner,
Yeah.
we've given you a lot to think about here.
They have.
And these principles,
Simple but powerful.
simple but powerful.
Yeah.
They might seem kind of obvious, but
But are they really?
are we really doing these things?
Right.
So here's a final thought.
All right.
In today's
Crazy world.
crazy world, right?
Yeah.
Everything's moving so
Well,
fast.
so much data.
So much data.
Yeah.
Which of these
Seemingly soft factors
seemingly soft factors like
like culture,
values,
autonomy,
irrationality,
irrationality. Do
irrationality?
you think those are the ones that are most underestimated?
Yeah, do you think those are the ones that we're missing?
Because we're so focused on the
Hard data,
hard stuff.
the numbers,
The numbers,
the metric.
the metrics.
Yeah.
So think about that, and then maybe think about a company that you really admire.
Yeah.
And do you see these principles
At work?
at work in that company?
Yeah.
And if so, how are they doing it?
Yeah.
So we really encourage you
To go deeper.
to go deeper
Read the whole book.
in search of excellence.
In Search of Excellence.
And think about
how you can apply these
lessons
to your own
life, your work,
your work.
your learning.
You're learning.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, the learner.
We'll see you next time.
See you.